This is ACC Nation with Will Ogenin and Jim Quist, featuring ACC sports news and interviews. Available on streaming radio, podcast, and YouTube. Welcome to ACC Nation. That's Will Ogenin, and I'm Jim Quist. And let's talk a little bit about the ACC and all the discussions over the last week or so regarding financing and putting more money into the pockets of people who are producing for the conference in a way to sort of check people wanting to move out of the conference or being upset with the conference, wanting to go to the SEC, the Big 10, Big 12, et cetera, et cetera. You and I, Will, have talked about this. I mean, there's no way to get around it. I mean, we've talked about this like a million times, both on the program and off the program, and probably in our sleep to one another. Not that we sleep in, but anyway, yeah, side-eye me there a little bit. But this is interesting that the board of directors said, yeah, we like this. And some of the people who we thought and everybody else thought was probably going to be a little less receptive to doing anything at all with the ACC moving forward, and that would be FSU, Clemson, et cetera, who were looking for more of the green. You know, you can't blame them. They appear to be happy, or at least they're saying that they're happy. There's more specifics to come on this. It's supposed to go into effect in the 24-25 season. So that means that if you're performing and you're winning, then you're going to get more money because of it. But does that automatically mean, Will, that all these teams that were saying, hey, we want more money, will they be getting more money?
Not necessarily. You got to perform. You got to prove. I mean, when this starts in 24-25, who knows what Florida State football is going to be like? You know, they're going to be, you know, they have a pretty veteran team this year.
Mm-hmm.
What will be, obviously, we know I'm just using Florida State as an example there because they're one of the biggest, you know, proponents of this. You know, what are they going to be like in 2 years when this goes through, when, you know, a lot of these big time players that are going to be a key factor in this year's team are going to be gone? You know, are they going to be, you know, you look at a team like Wake Forest, for example, that doesn't put nearly as much into its football program, but is continually one of the most successful programs in the league, you know, consistently going to bowls, winning 7-8 games every year. This may benefit them just from the football aspect. I'm not even going to, you know, if you look at all the other non-revenue sports, I mean, Virginia crushes it in all those sports. They just won a national championship in tennis, and men's tennis. They're going to be in the baseball tournament here coming up. You know, they make it, and you know, they're consistently in it in soccer and lacrosse as well. So maybe, I don't know, we still don't know all the facts, but it'll incentivize teams to really, you know, do more and do more in the athletic side, and, you know, and be invested in their success.
I think the one thing that we can say almost conclusively is that they're going to put a little more weight into football and basketball performance.
Yeah.
They will be some of the Olympic sports, which, you know, may or may not be fair, but you know, this is something that they have to work out. And as I said, specifics are to come, but there are plenty of teams across the ACC that are performing way above average and at a stellar level in Olympic sports. And, you know, women's basketball, can't leave that out. So, you know, and it just goes across the line here. There's a lot of sports which should be included here, when I know they will be, that I think you have to look at fairly and say, okay, well, how much revenue are they bringing? And this is what they have to figure out. How many eyes are you know, are they bringing to this equation? And that's where They're going to weight, obviously, football and probably men's basketball more so than women's basketball, lacrosse, or swimming, or rowing, soccer. It's all about the numbers. So I guess they're going to tie it in some fashion with viewing numbers, I guess, through the ACC network and whatever other network is carrying some of the properties or the games content.
I mean, the main network doesn't necessarily carry them. If you want to find them on the plus, go for it.
Yeah, yeah. And I guess this also include any games that end up on ABC. There will be games probably on NBC because Notre Dame plays, and they will be playing teams from the ACC. So you have to look at all these numbers and see what's being brought in to make that final determination.
Yeah, and you always talk about the there's always the realignment piece to this, because what else are we going to talk about in this time of year? The people who care about spring sports are not nearly the same as people care about football, basketball, etc. And there's just not much else out of us, so we just throw out crazy rumors and see where it goes.
All right, let's explore a couple of crazy rumors along these lines before we start talking about baseball, because we're in the middle of the championship, ACC championship, and whatnot, and there's a lot of other things that are going on too that we can discuss when it comes to ACC sports. But realignment wise, I think you can pretty much take the ACC off the table here, and I don't think it was ever on the table, to be honest with you, because every bit of discussion always goes back to the GOR, and nobody has been able to figure out how do we break this grant of rights without absolutely destroying ourselves financially. So, boom, it's gone. Now, you and I were looking at an article that had to do with the Big Ten and how some moves by the former commissioner may have diminished some of that sparkle, not in a major way, but enough. I mean, we're talking multiple millions here about, making sure that, the championship is going to be on NBC, and he didn't have the authority to do that. And so there's some payback going to different networks because there was a lot of weird shuffle going on there. And I just think that suddenly this whole thing of who gets to $1 billion first becomes tarnished very quickly when we start looking at all these contracts, because number one, here's the biggest thing for me, Will.
Yeah.
I'm looking at ESPN and all the cutbacks across the board. I mean, huge. And they're not bidding on things. It's because it's gotten too expensive. And they don't make the type of money off of this stuff like everybody thinks they ought to be. So, all these huge contracts are not going to come to fruition. And however long they last, that's why they're short termers. They're not going to last a long time. So as you pointed out to me, hey, maybe the ACC is in a better position than we thought.
So I'm going to use an analogy. Those of you who remember, who are wrestling fans, will remember this. I think it was about 1996 when Bret Hart signed a 20-year contract with the then WWF, now WWE. And then a year later, Vince McMahon comes to him and is like, hey, I can't afford this contract anymore. If you can go find a better deal, get it. This could have ultimately be the case with some of these leagues, because the money is ridiculous. And where is it going to come from? And you mentioned the ESPN is, letting, they're cutting back a lot, even though they're adding, Pat McAfee, but they're letting go of a lot of talent to do that.
Yeah.
And who's to, and it, they like to work, use ad revenue, but that can only get you so far. And the reality is streaming numbers, just streaming in general is not making ESPN as valuable as it once was. I mean, it just ESPN in general just isn't as valuable as it once was. Who didn't grow up watching Stuart Scott and Rich Eisen, Dan Patrick, Keith Olbermann on Sports Center, Kenny Mayne? Eh, How many people how many Sports Center anchors can you name now? To be honest, I don't watch Sports Center much anymore. That's the thing.
Zero.
I remember L. Duncan is one of the ones I remember. And I just so happen to remember that because I saw her on yesterday was that while I was at the gym, but there aren't very many that you could just remember anymore. They just don't have the same cachet. People just don't people aren't as a whole just I don't think are invested in the sports now as they used to be. And they're willing to pump out the kind of money to to do stuff. The ESPN Plus is healthy, but only diehards really want that. The plus side. I mean, I know ESPN I think is going to do something special here in a couple of years. I think they're going to do their own standalone service or something like that. I remember seeing something. I forget the exact specifics. I didn't read the article, but I think long story short, there's no guarantee that by the time the the schools think they can get out of the grant of rights, and we still have 13 more years of this. I mean, the buyouts will be significantly less, but if the ESPN has the SEC contract, if Florida State wants to leave to go to the SEC, what incentive does ESPN have to add them? They're not going to be able to afford them. If this happens, I don't see all these teams going to the SEC, all these teams going to the Big Ten. The possibility exists that half this league splits and forms its own, but still,
Yeah.
where's the money where's the TV contract going to come from? And people, ESPN's is the big one. But as we mentioned, we've talked about their financial woes. Fox News or Fox in general is incurring some financial woes of their own. They don't, they've shed some stuff, obviously. CBS, obviously the main CBS, has the Big Ten now. They're going to be heavily invested in that, and an NBC with Notre Dame, where, what, I mean, you're not going to put the ACC on CBS Sportsnet. I mean,
No.
I don't even have that channel, but and so basically, I think all this said, there's a non-zero chance the ACC will be okay in the long term. It looks bad right now, but give it a few years. ACC we could be looking at this and say, hey, this isn't so bad.
Let me throw a couple of more things in here, Will, because this is something that I don't think anybody really takes into consideration as a fan. I think the broad fan group of people who watch sports in general are not really keeping up with a lot of this. Sinclair, which owns a lot of local broadcasts and also owns Bally's. Bally's is basically going on that
Belly
way.
up, yep.
Let's talk about the Athletic. The Athletic bumping out people left and right because that pay to play type of thing for that content can only go so far. People will only pay so much. Here's the other thing with streaming, and you bring up streaming. Let's talk about there was a time when cable basically was carrying, the major networks. The major networks could afford the big bucks, and they could shell out to get, the NFL and all the other things. Well, then when we started moving to streaming, there were only a few players involved in that. Now look at the table, at what you have to choose from. You have so many streaming services. And what was one of the first things you started noticing about streaming services? They started charging more and more and more and more money. Well, that's one of the reasons why, from my perspective, it took me a little longer to go to streaming than probably most people out there. But because I tend to be sort of, I want to see strategically where things are going. I went with YouTube TV. Um, haven't been, let down by that so far. Don't expect it to be, but I can tell you this, that when you start looking at the cost for your streaming service, the cost for your internet in order to have that streaming service, and you throw your phone in there, um, you're still cranking up the type of money that you had before. One of the reasons why I got out of my regular stuff was because the company that was providing my cable, my internet, and my phone was basically not paying any attention to longtime customers, and they're losing them left and right, by the way. And thank you. It's so nice to see that. I'm enjoying every moment of your agony because you didn't pay any attention to us. Instead, you went after all these new people. Okay, cool. I get that. That's business. Fine. But at the same time, I'm going to leave your butt in the dust. And a lot of people are doing the same thing. So, but here's the thing. I like a lot of people go into the streaming to get a decent price, right? And get, good variety. Did that. Now I look around and I'm going like, oh my God, everybody and their brother is doing some, like, Disney Plus, Discovery Plus, Hulu, Netflix, on down the line. I mean, you just got this long line of streaming services. And if you look at it, all the things you start adding on because you want these specific products, you're probably paying more, there's as much or more than you did when you were paying for cable. What happens there is it starts to break out the demographics that you had consolidated in cable, and now everybody and their brother is like just spread out all over the place from the fandom. I mean, when you've got Twitter carrying football, Amazon's carrying football, you got all that going on. The reality is it's hard to sell advertising on streaming services at the price, at that optimal price that you had when you had just like 3 or 4 networks, and they were all on cable. You're just not making as much money. You're not going to make as much money. Things are different. People can't quite grasp that. This is one of the reasons why CNN, who had planned on going with a streaming service, a new streaming service, got right up to the point. In fact, hired some people away from NBC to run it. And at the last moment, pulled the carpet out and said, it's not viable. It's not going to work. So we're not, we just don't see it. So they dropped it. And I think you're going to see more of that. I think you're going to see more of the streaming services are just going to say, hey, we're not making the type of money in order for us to buy $1 billion contract with the Big Ten or SEC. It's just going in that direction. I don't know how they're going to make the money to cover their expenses. I don't see it. I really don't. I mean, I don't advertisers. I spent a good portion of my life selling advertising and media. Mm-hmm. It's hard enough to sell people on the concept of advertising to begin with, even though it is a proven fact. You got to put your name out there, and you've got to be repetitive in order to get people to come in and spend money with you. Well, a lot of people don't look at it that way. They really don't. They don't see the need for advertising. That's a problem. It's a problem that you can overcome, maybe sometimes, maybe not. But they're not going to spend huge amounts of money like they used to advertise on something that is in their minds less than or more spread out. And I'll give you a couple of good examples where you can look at I I tell you what, anybody who's really interested in how that has affected radio, look up Odyssey, Audacy. Look at where their stock is today. That used to be a big company. Look at where their stock is today. And the fact that they got yanked off the New York Stock Exchange because it dropped down below 10 cents a share. And look at what's going on there. People are, if you just dilute your product, your content providers, you lose all these people, and people start going, nah, not going to pay it. I'm not going to pay the money. So those $1 billion contracts that everybody's all excited about, I think it's flash in the pan. I don't know how long that's going to last.
There's going to be sort of a come to Jesus moment with all this, and it's going to, I don't know when it's going to hit, but it will at some point in the future. And I don't know what's going to come of it. But it's going to happen at some point.
Yeah. I think we may be there and we just don't realize it.
Yeah.
Let's talk about baseball. I mean, this is a topic, quite literally, it can turn into a clickbait sort of product, that, realignment and everything. This thing is the churn that's going on. You just have a feel that it's going to implode. It just that feels where, to me, like that whole thing is just going in that direction, that the bottom is going to drop out. And again, coming back to what you said, the ACC may be in a lot better position than people give them credit for being in. So we'll see. Let's take a look at baseball, and we'll go back to the action that started on Tuesday. Number 6 seed Boston College defeated Virginia Tech, a number 10 seed, 11-7. North Carolina was a number 7 seed, defeated Georgia Tech, an 11 seed, 11-5. And number 9 seed NC State upset number 5 seed Duke. That final score going into 11 innings, 8-7.
Yeah, that was an interesting game. I think Duke was down 2 in the 9th inning. It was like 7-5 or something like that. And then they got a 2-run homer to tie it in the bottom of the 9th, and went extra innings, and then State scored in the top of the 11th, and then held on for dear life and got the win. And that's huge for the Wolfpack.
Yes, a nice move. And that game is, I think it would have, either way you look at it, I think it was going to be super competitive to begin with. I think that the seating there might have been misleading for anybody just looking at it and saying, well, it's number 5 versus a number 9. I think they were a lot closer, and obviously they were. So action that a little more recent. Number 8 Notre Dame fell to number 12 seed Pitt. That final score there, 9-5. That was quite that is an upset.
Mm-hmm.
Quite an upset. But Notre Dame is struggling here toward the end of the season. So the other game, which was absolutely wow, and the final score 15-1. Number 2 seed Virginia over number 11 Georgia Tech. One of the comments coming out of the Wahoos there was that, hey, we're playing games just like we would be if we were in the regionals. We're going after it. So hungry team.
Yeah, I don't know what's gotten into this team over the last couple of weeks. They have just been unbelievable. Since we last spoke, they have just been on one. And obviously that continued today with a 15-1 trouncing of Georgia Tech. And they've been just hitting the crap out of all. It looked like what they were earlier in the season. Granted, the competition wasn't nearly what it is now, but they're just the switch has kind of hit for this team. And
Yeah.
yeah, a couple of weeks ago, we were talking them as probably like a number two seed in one of the regionals. Now they're just solidly in as a host.
We're going to take a look at the D1 baseball field of 64 projection. It's a couple of days old, but nonetheless, we're going to take a look at it. Game that's going on right now while we're talking. Number 3 Clemson is taking on number 10 Virginia Tech. On Thursday, it's number 1 Wake Forest, and that is just phenomenal. This team has just, I mean, we can't say enough good things about Wake Forest. It's just been a great season. They have really powered their way toward the top, not only in the ACC, but nationally. They're still number 1. Number 1 Wake Forest is going to be taking on number 12 Pitt. Number 2 Virginia takes on number 7 North Carolina. Number 4 Miami will face off with NC State on Friday. And just to remind everybody, this is pool play before they get to semifinals and to the championship, which will be played on Sunday at noon. On Friday, number 3 Clemson will take on number 6 Boston College, which has been a surprise team here toward the end of the season. Number 4 Miami will take on number 5 Duke, and number 1 Wake Forest against number 8 Notre Dame. Thoughts on those games?
Yeah, these are setting up for some big games here coming up. We're still waiting on the one tonight to see how Virginia Tech, if they can work their way, onto the bubble potentially. Pitt looking like kind of the surprise team of this tournament. We mentioned how they defeated Notre Dame earlier today, put up 9 runs in an impressive win. Uh, we obviously got Wake, so it's Wake is, as you mentioned, probably one of the biggest stories in college baseball this year. Just an amazing pitcher in Red Lauter, who's someone who has just been absolutely dominant this year. UNC taking on Virginia, how can the bats sustain after a 15-run effort today? We'll see. Carolina's no slouch. They obviously are very good. Miami taking on NC State's interesting. We obviously, the Wolfpack, upset Duke on one night or Tuesday night. Got a big game coming up against Miami, who will be in the tournaments. State kind of hanging in there too. Clemson BC should be interesting, but BC's had a pretty successful season. They should be in the tournament. Obviously, Clemson will be too. I think both Duke and Miami will be there as well. And Notre Dame taking on Wake, yeah, obviously, we'll see what Notre Dame can do. I mean, Wake is Wake is Wake. They've been, they're number 1 in college baseball as the season ended. And last thought in this, somebody can explain this pool play thing to me, because we do this every year and I still can never figure it out.
I'll do it offline.
I feel like the episode of The Simpsons where Mr. Smithers went on vacation and Homer took over his job, and Homer was listening to him go over his duties, and Homer's like, can you repeat the part of the stuff where you said all about the things?
Things.
The
Yes.
things?
Oh man. Yeah, that's about the way it works. Things. Uh,
Mhm.
D1 Baseball's top 25, which was updated just the other day. Wake Forest is at number 1. At number 6 is Clemson. At number 11, Miami. Virginia is at number 12. Also in that mix is Boston College at 22. So some surprising teams there. Let's take a look at D1 Baseball's projected 64 here. The
Ooh.
last 4 in and first 4 out from strongest to weakest. let's see here. I want to make sure I've got the right one and we're both looking at the same thing.
Mine is updated from 2 days ago, and it has Arizona State, Notre Dame, Oklahoma, and NC State as the last four in, and Texas State, Elon, UTSA, and Cal State Fullerton as the first four out.
Correct, Mundo, that we're looking at the right one. Okay. You know, it's always good to check to make sure we're both on the same page. Go ahead and run down the at least the ACC teams that are seeded according to the projections out of the D1 baseball guys.
Yeah, it's kind of funny how things have changed so much over the last couple of weeks. Wake Forest currently the number one overall seed in the Winston-Salem. BC is also a projected number one in what's called Brighton region. Mm-hmm. Just kind of scrolling through here. If I miss somebody, I'm sorry. UNC a number two in the Stanford regional. Kind of feel out of place when you've got Stanford, California, San Jose State, California, UC Santa Barbara, California, North Carolina, North Carolina. Clemson, number 6 overall seed, hosting their own regional. Miami at number 11, hosting their regional. NC State, like I said, they're one of the last teams in. They're at the 3 in the Conway regional with its fellow Carolina school brethren in South Carolina, UNC Wilmington, and Coastal Carolina. Duke as a 2 seed in the Whistler region. Would do me a huge favor and shut that guy up. That would be great. And then Virginia is the number 8 overall seed in Charlottesville. And then lastly, Notre Dame is a 3 in the Lexington region with Kentucky, Morehead State, and Indiana State.
This is a really interesting field of 64.
Yeah, definitely. You got a mix of the usual suspects, and then teams that come out of nowhere, like a Wake Forest, for example.
I really, and I hate to, I'm not going to say anything to jinx it, but man, I'm crossing my fingers. We'll see how this all works out.
Yeah. Whatever it takes to avoid the Whistler.
Good Lord.
Yeah. Shout out to got my guy Pregame Empire who on Twitter who is actually talking about him on Twitter today, and he showed a picture of the truck he has. I mean, God, that guy, that's the definition of overboard.
Yeah, I used to work for a guy that he had a very succinct way of putting it. He would say he's ate up with dumbass. So there we go. I think it applies. One of the things we wanted to check in on was the women's championship. ACC women are involved in the NCAA Division I Women's Golf Championship out at Grayhawk. It's Wake Forest and USC. And so far, Wake Forest is up 2-1, and they are leading in the in this round of play. They have been pretty dominant going into this championship series. It's only one place where I've seen any sort of slight weakness, but I wouldn't say it's a big deal. Looks to me like there's a very good chance that Wake Forest is going to pull out a national championship for golf. So that would be fantastic too. So I look forward to that. You had some other sports that you wanted to look at as well, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, just a quick update on the NCAA softball championship, as that is reached super regional stage, and ACC does look pretty good still. Unfortunately, Louisville season ended along with Notre Dame and Virginia Tech. They were all eliminated in the regional rounds, but Still holding strong. We've got Clemson as the number 16 seed taking on Oklahoma, the most dominant program in softball here, and that'll be in Norman, Oklahoma. Number 8, Duke is advanced to the super regionals. They'll be taking on Stanford. These are best 2 out of 3, by the way, with the winners of these series going to the Women's College World Series. Florida State's they'll be taking on Georgia in Tallahassee here. So the Women's College World Series will be in Oklahoma City. So the winners of these will be advancing to that. And just wanted to
Carolina
also, while we're
success and
Oops.
domination.
Nice.
talking about, sorry, I think an ad was playing while I was doing this, but
No, that was actually me. I was taking a look at women's tennis real quick. So okay.
kind of I thought the softballs site I was looking at was, but I wanted to give a shout out to Catherine Sandercock, the pitcher for Florida State, who I believe she did pitched a no hitter. Yeah, it was perfect game to send them to the super regionals in that game. So that was an amazing feat. So we just wanted to give her a shout out too.
A lot of great sports. Some of it's still going on, spring sports, and was it? Oh, I got to pass this along to you. So I'm in an office today, and I'm talking to an individual who works there. Very nice lady, and we get into talking about the ACC. She goes, my husband is a huge Hokies fan. It's it's just an overboard fanatic, right? And
Right.
so I mean, it's an interesting conversation, and she's saying, yeah, I'm not so much as a big fan like he is, but he's from Virginia, and I'm from Wisconsin, and I'm
Oh,
going,
I'm sorry.
okay. Yeah, so I'm going down this path, right? And she mentions Badgers, and she said, I'm okay with that. I said, so you happen to be a Green Bay Packers fan? And it was like, oh yeah. I mean, it was like, I said, well, just let you know, I'm a Chicago Bears fan, and the disdain was immediate, Will. And I said, well, see, my partner in crime, he's out there in Vikings country, so it was a pretty funny conversation. She was
And you two no longer get along.
no, she was pretty cool about everything.
Nah.
She had some funny stories to tell about her husband and being a Virginia Tech Hokies fan. She says, as long as he takes me and we stay at the Hotel Roanoke, I'm good. I get that time, and I'm good to go. But otherwise, it's so yeah, not everybody's a fan. She basically says, I'm sort of one of those long suffering fan wives, or wives of fans, and so interesting. So I told her, I said, I'll mention you on the podcast, just because it's an interesting conversation. So next time I see you, I'll bring you some cheese curds.
Actually sounds good.
Yeah, nice lady, very very cool, and so, wished us both good luck with our teams. So that's very very appropriate, as I did.
Did you detect any sarcasm?
Well, I'm sure she detected some in mine when I returned the favor. So
Yeah. Good luck with Jordan Love.
wow. Yeah. Yeah. So my theory here is that Aaron Rodgers, who is the bane of our existence, who is now with the New York Jets, who pulled his calf muscle just a little bit and is supposed to be out like for 3 days or some nonsense like that. He's not going to make it through the season because of some health related issue. That's what I'm thinking.
Bad dose of whatever the hallucinogen he's taken.
Yep. Something.
I forget what it's called.
Something along those lines.
Yeah.
All right. So let's look at what's going on with sports across the Atlantic Coast Conference. Until next time, cheers.
Skål.